Good morning, traders. Welcome to the Pirate Traders Morning Show. Our apologies for running a few minutes late. All right, well, today I'm joined by, the card says Lady D, but I promise that's not Lady D, that's Paul. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Don't feel like Lady D at all, but hey, whatever.
Yeah, sorry about that. Listen, sometimes you get misgendered on this show. It happens.
Oh, well. What can I say?
Let's jump into some TA real quick. All right, so my TA today is actually going to sound very, very similar to yesterday. Essentially, nothing really changed yesterday. Basically, the market had a potential to break lower or a potential to stay in balance, and it did both. It both broke lower in the morning, creating a lower low and a lower high on the daily, but then it also stayed in balance by pulling back up into what we're now calling a larger balance area. Let me get my drawing tool up and running here. Doobie-doobie-doo. Okay, so we're seeing this now as a larger balance area. So it looked below that balance area low, it came back up, and then it just went sideways inside the upper end of the range. That is a signal of balance, which increases the odds we're heading up to the opposite end of the range. But the lower low and lower high on the daily are a sign of momentum down that we're going to continue lower. So I pretty much am seeing today exactly the same way as I saw yesterday. I see it as a chop zone first thing in the morning. The market is likely to chop and grind and chop and grind. If we start to get below, I'm not going to use today's overnight low. I'm actually going to use the overnight low from 2 nights ago, or from the night before last. We're going to call that 57.34. To me, that is the sort of area where we look for the market to start to break lower if it gets below there. And as long as it stays above it, we expect it to just chop sideways inside yesterday's range. And then yesterday's high is the area I'm looking to break to the upside. If we can get above yesterday's high, we look for continuation up to the opposite end. Okay, I'm just going to zoom out and show you the same information on the daily candle so you can kind of see it more clearly. So if this market is in balance, okay, this is what a break out of balance looks like. You get momentum in that direction. So if this is a balance area, and we're breaking out today, we could expect momentum in that direction. If it is a failure, this right here is what a failure looks like, where it looks below that balance area low. What does it do? It turns around and goes to the opposite end. So one of those two things is likely to happen today and tomorrow. We're either going to rotate up to the opposite end of balance, or we're going to break lower. And I know I literally said the exact same thing yesterday, but you can't help it if the market goes nowhere. That is always a possibility, right? No matter what scenario you play out in your mind as the potential scenarios for the day, there is always door number 3 where the market just goes nowhere for a day and just spends time going sideways, okay? That's what ended up happening yesterday. That could happen again today, but that's not the framework I'm going to approach with, right? I'm not going to start the day assuming it's going nowhere all day. I'm going to start the day assuming it's going to go nowhere for a few hours and then look for those breaks. Now, if it starts to break lower and it reverses back up like it did yesterday, oh well, then I'll assume it's going to go sideways the rest of the day. If it starts to break higher and reverses back down, oh well, I'll assume it's going to go sideways the rest of the day. But in the morning first thing, my assumption is we're heading either up towards the all-time highs or we're looking to break lower, okay? And we're monitoring for continuation to the downside. So those are the levels that I'm watching. It is the overnight low from the night before last and yesterday's high. That is a very large range, obviously, right? That's a lot of space to let the market go sideways and just sit and watch the chart bounce around. But to me, it's worth it because the probabilities are very, very good. If we can get above yesterday's high and get new buying, that we will get a move up to the all-time highs. Not necessarily the same day, but in the days ahead. There's plenty of money to be made from there to there. I don't need that little extra bit inside the range to get into a trade where I'm guessing and I'm gambling. Same thing with the low, right? If we break below there and we get resistance, at the very least, we're looking to make a new lower low on the daily. Plenty of money to be made there. I don't need to guess and gamble inside the range. So for some of you, that's very difficult to do when you have such a large range as we have here, to see it as a giant chop zone between 57.40 and 57.70. Right. And to think I'm going to just watch it go up and down over and over inside that range for hours and do nothing. But to me, inside that range, it is gambling. It could reverse at any moment for any reason. Even if every signal in the world tells you it's going to make another 5-point move to the upside, right then and there, it can reverse and do a 10-point move to the downside. So if you're taking trades inside that chop zone, you are likely to get chopped up. You're likely to get stopped out and stopped out and stopped out, and it will be very difficult. So I would suggest proceeding with caution. All right, what do you got for us today, Paul? I think you might be muted. You may have hit your mute button. Beep. We are experiencing technical difficulties. Still not hearing you. Let me double check the settings on my end. Yeah, you should be good. All right. Well, Paul, keep playing with it and just talk. And then if you interrupt me, we'll know you're back. In the meantime, I will jump on and take a look at the queue. All right, so the NQ is looking very similar to the ES. However, it is less bearish to see. Chat, can you tell me why the Q is less bearish? Anyone? There's two things that popped out of me the second I opened the chart that both told me to be less bearish. Can anyone tell me what it is? Talking about participation from the chat. Yeah. JB says balance. Value. There we go. Sign. Ship's got it. So there are two things that make the NQ less bearish than the ES. The first is they did not make a lower low on the daily. So yesterday, the day was completely inside the previous day's range. So when you have a day that's inside the previous day's range, that is neither bearish nor bullish. It is just an inside day. It is just a day where the market is spending time going sideways inside the previous day's range. So it's unknown which way it's going to break, whereas the ES had a lower low and the value was overlapping to higher, whereas the value on the ES was inside the previous day's value. So the daily is telling us uncertainty. The value is telling us reversal to the upside. So for the NQ, I see it exactly the same as the ES. I see it as a chop zone, and I'm going to use the overnight range as that chop zone. So if you get below the overnight low, look to test the previous day's low, monitor for continuation lower from there. If you get to the overnight high, look to test the previous day's high, monitor for continuation from there. And inside the overnight range, so basically between 20,070 and 19,850, in between those areas, chop, sideways, and grind. I think we heard you, Paul.
Do you hear?
There we go. We got you.
Okay, my other microphone's out. Sorry. I don't know what happened to it.
Yep.
I think that's my PC.
Son of a gun. Do you want to share your screen as well?
Sure. Okay. So we continue along, though. I was listening. I could hear you fine, so I know what you're up to. So
perfect. It's all yours.
Well, a couple of things are going on I really hadn't paid that much attention to, but Shanghai is breaking out, which is odd. I've talked about China being a place that is just something's going on. But yeah, at the moment, something is really going on in the Shanghai market because the government has introduced additional easing and lowered their capitalization requirements for banks and stuff like that. And something has worked because this baby is now flying if anybody trades the Asian markets. So that's one thing going on that I would think is worth talking about. And then crude oil has bounced quite a bit, perhaps over, the macro issues may be the war tensions in the Middle East, but your trade is alive and well. So I'm pretty impressed with that. Those are the two main things in the news. I couldn't find anything that was exceptional outside of that, but it definitely bounced. Oil has bounced quite a bit the past day or so, back from that floor of around 67. So who knows? Maybe that's what's worth going on.
Yeah,
Plus,
actually, you bring up oil. We talked about that before the show started. I want to show my chart. Not trying to pretend I'm a wizard or anything like that. It was pure luck, but not pure luck. But yeah, when you look at my crude oil, this is that trend line that we've been talking about. This trend line's been sitting here for weeks. And I said, whenever they find support in here, that's where they're going to head back up to. Well, look where we're at right now. Look where we reversed to a tick yesterday, right at that trend line. And we are now pushing back up into it today. So to me, that's really that's the next important thing for the crude oil. If it can get through there, you should get a little pop, a little bit of short covering. Then it should come back down and test it as support. If it does both of those things and it holds as support, that's very bullish for a larger move to the upside. Okay. Now, if it fails to break through that trend line, if it tags it again today and it gets smacked down, well, then we need to spend more time going sideways to lower prices.
Yeah, but the complicated thing with oil, as we were discussing as well, is that it's a physical commodity, and so there are producers out there. Mm-hmm. So part of what may be bugging your trend line is a group of CFOs out there that are saying we're sellers at this price.
Yep.
And so they're selling forward production more so than they would otherwise. They've got a cost of production of X, and when they can get X percent gross margin off of that, then they're going to sell as much as the market will buy. And so that's a totally different element that you never really see in indexes.
Yeah, it's much choppier and more difficult because of that. And it's same thing with the buyers, right? If you buy oil, right now it might seem cheap. It might seem like it's on sale, but if you start breaking through that trend line, you might be thinking, I'm going to wait for a pullback before I start buying more oil. So, yeah, it's a little bit trickier than traditional TA for sure.
Yep.
But it just is funny to me how it bounced exactly to a tick on that trend line. Yep. And remember, trend lines are the simplest TA on earth. Like, you don't have to be a charting expert to see it. So everyone is looking at trend lines.
Lisa, go get the dog for me, babe. I'm sorry. We got household noises today.
That's all right. Okay. So, Paul, is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I mean, NQ looked very much like ES, which was kind of depressing. Looks like we're net short coming out of Europe. So we'll see. Looks like Europe's expecting it to go down.
Yeah, that's what somebody in the chat, Design Knob, brought up the fact that it's a P-shaped profile. So technically a P-shaped profile on the NQ should be bullish. It is a sign of momentum to the upside, but then look what the overnight did. It went nowhere. And it spent most of its time and brought in most of its volume at the lower end of yesterday's range. So that sort of negates it and lets us know this thing could break either way today. And as I said, I would use the overnight low and the overnight high as the levels to watch. All right. Well, with nothing else, I guess we could say
all that's left is for them to hit the like button. 7 of them have. Hello, guys.
Yeah. What's the deal, y'all?
Charles, if you don't like me.
What's it going to take to get some likes?
Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much. There'll be no morning show tomorrow as I'll be on the move, but we'll be back on Tuesday. So thank you very much. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you all. Have a good night.